Hi, my name is Aneel Aranha. I'm an evangelist who has been traveling around the world for the past 12 years, talking to people about God and how much He loves them. And the strange thing is that even though I do this almost on a daily basis, for most of my life I didn't believe in God. 25 years to be exact. I was about 13 or 14 when I stopped believing in Him, and the reasons are many. But they're not really relevant to anything I have to say here today. What is relevant is that my disbelief in God was complete. I just did not believe that He existed. And as the years went by, nothing changed that belief. I used to read a lot, and all the philosophers and the wise men that I read just seemed to confirm my own belief that God was somebody we invented to explain the things we couldn't explain. But if intellectual certainty was not enough, my own life seemed to bear witness to the fact that God wasn't real. If you had met me 12 years ago, you would have met a man who had everything a man could want. I had a very successful business with offices in 3 countries. I had a beautiful wife and 2 lovely children. I had a huge house with everything in it. I had everything a man could want. But more than this, I was a man to whom nothing bad ever seemed to happen. I used to get into fights, I used to get into accidents, I used to get into situations that should have seen me arrested or injured or even dead. But nothing happened to me, not even a scratch. And when you live a life that is so charmed, you begin to think you're invincible. You begin to think you're untouchable. You begin to think you can do anything you want, and for a long time I could, until one day things started to change. I lost my business. It's a long story and I don't need to go into that. Then I lost all my money. Then I lost all my friends. It's usually what happens when you lose all your money. And bit by bit, I began to lose everything I had until one day, all I had left was my freedom and my family. And then there came a day when I lost that too. I went out drinking one night. I got so drunk I don't remember getting home. I don't remember what I did after I got home, except sometime in the morning, I found my room filled with policemen, and I knew I had done something terrible. I was taken to the lockup, and a little while later, I found out what I had done. I'd smashed my house to pieces. I'd hurt my wife so badly she had to be taken to hospital. And I pulled a knife on her, threatening to kill her and my little daughter, who was then only about 6 years old. I was a bad man, and I wasn't a very good husband or a very good father. But in my strange way, I loved my family, and it seemed impossible to me that I would do something like this to hurt them. But in one of those rare moments of honesty that we're sometimes blessed with, I realized that in an anger, especially a drunken anger, I could have killed them all. And I was horrified and ashamed. And the next time I spoke to my wife, I told her how sorry I was. I said I'll never do anything to hurt her again, but she said, Anil, I'm tired of listening to your lies. I'm taking the children and leaving. And in that moment, I knew my life was over. In less than 12 months, I had lost everything I had. And when you don't have anything, then what is the point of living? And I knew when they let me out of jail, I'd go for a swim one day and keep on swimming. It was all over for me. Sat down in the cell, wondering what happened to this invincible man, what happened to this untouchable man, what happened to this man who could do anything he wanted. He's lying in jail like a common thief. And as these thoughts went across my mind, I happened to look in the cell across from me, and I saw a young man there reading the Bible. But what I noticed about him was the look of peace he had on his face. He looked so peaceful, he looked almost like an angel, and I envied him. Jails are not peaceful places. There were people throwing things at each other, fighting with one another, yelling at the top of their voices, and this man sat there like he didn't have a care in the world. And I envied him. And I envied him more a minute later when I realized in all my life I had not known one day of peace, not one day. So I went to this young man and I asked him how he managed it. And he simply said, Jesus. No, I didn't believe in Jesus any more than a day earlier, but hope springs eternal in the human heart. And when you've decided you're going to die, you just cling to whatever last straw you can. And I remember crying out to Jesus in the cell that day. I said, Jesus, if you truly exist, help me get out of this mess. And it's not just the jail cell I meant my entire life, because I could suddenly see it for what it was. Pretty to look at from the outside, but hollow and rotting and corrupt on the inside. And even as I cried out to him, I almost imagined I heard somebody sigh. The next time I spoke to my wife, I told her not to leave me. I begged her not to leave me. I said I'll do anything to keep the family together, even get back to God. And I don't think she believed me, because I was a hardcore atheist. When I said I didn't believe in God, I just didn't believe in him. I refused to let our 2 children be baptized. I didn't let my wife pray in the house or outside the house. If she dared to bring a Bible or a prayer book into the house, I tear it up and throw it into the garbage. I was so sure that God wasn't real. But my wife seemed prepared to give me a chance, and I was grateful, because I did mean what I said. And the first day they let me out of jail, I walked into a church for the first time in 25 years of my own will. Mass was going on. I took part in it the best I could, which wasn't much really. I stood when everybody stood. I sat when everybody sat. But I couldn't bring myself to kneel. I was so proud, so arrogant. After Mass was over, I went to meet the parish priest. His name was Father John. I told him I wanted to get back to God, but he looked at me for a long minute. I'll never forget that. And then he said, Aneel, I'm not convinced of your sincerity. I want you to go back to church and meditate for a while. And I thought, never mind what I thought. There seemed to be an element of truth in what he said. Besides, I was too tired to argue. So I went back to church and I sat down there, wondering what to do next. I wanted to believe in God. I needed to believe in God. But what was I supposed to do? Say, hey, God, sorry, I made a mistake about you. You're real. I wanted to do that, but it wasn't happening, not here. And as I sat down there in the church, looking around rather helplessly, my eyes fell on a beautiful picture of Our Lady holding the baby Jesus. It was a black and gold mosaic, and she really looked beautiful in it. And as I looked at her, I suddenly heard her say to me, Aneel, come to me. I looked away. I thought my imagination was running wild. But then a moment later, I heard her say again, I can still hear her voice in my mind, so kind, so soft, so gentle. Aneel, come to me. But rather than be happy, I started to get frightened. You know, when you hear pictures talking to you, voices in your head, it's not a good sign. It's a sign a few screws might be coming loose there. And I started to get frightened. And then I heard her say for the 3rd time, Aneel, don't be afraid. Come to me. Fortunately, there were only about 5 people in the church that day. Otherwise, I never would have done what I did next. I got up and I walked across to this picture and only stood there for a long time, unable to look up, frightened again. I don't know why. But when I finally found the courage to look up, I felt something reach out and touch me, and this fire traveled through my body. Only it wasn't a hot fire. It was a cold fire, and the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced in my life. And then I believed. You know, it is said, all you need to do is take one step towards God, and he will cross miles to get to you. And I saw evidence of that in the church that day. I was a man who was lost and couldn't find his way back home. God didn't wait for me to stop and ask for directions. He came and he took me home. And on the way, he gave me a gift. He gave me a gift of faith. It's a very powerful gift, and it has helped to change my life and the lives of so many people through the years. And really, this is a gift worth having. Anyway, I went back to the priest after this, and Very graciously, he took me under his wing and he taught me the things I learned as a little child. I was born a Christian, and there was a good chance I might have become a priest if the enemy had not stolen me away, but it is said that God works for the good of all those who love him, and he has made good out of this. After a week of teaching me things that I'd learned as a boy, he told me I was ready to make a confession, and I wanted this to be a good confession. So the night before, I sat down and I went through my life, and I discovered I'd committed just about every sin known to man. And once again, I was ashamed and horrified, not so much by the extent of sinning, or even the number of sins, but by the fact I'd not even been aware that so much of what I was doing was wrong. When I look at the world, I feel sorry for the people there, because they're blind, they cannot see, they're deaf, they cannot hear. They're lost, and they don't know the way home. And how are they to find their way unless those who know the way home go and bring them back? And this is one of the things that I try to do through my ministry, is to go and tell people that their Father loves them so much and to come home. He's waiting for them. It is what I hope that those of you who are listening to this testimony will also do, because truly, truly He waits for every single one of His children to come back. Anyway, the next day I went for confession, and I spent nearly 2 hours with this priest. I spent 1 hour weeping because I was so sorry for the things I had done. And after I finished my confession, he told me to say 1 rosary as penance. And I almost laughed in his face. I said, "That's it? 1 rosary? 25 years of sinning and I get away with that?" And he said, "Why? What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know, Father. Make it at least 25 rosaries, 1 for each year I've been away." And he said, "If you want to do that, fine. But for me, that wasn't enough. In the world I came from, if somebody hit you in one eye, you hit him in both the eyes. I wanted to be punished for what I did. I wanted to be taken out and beaten for every single sin that I'd committed." Now this priest, whatever I may have thought of him in the beginning, was a very wise man, and he seemed to know what I was thinking, because he would say the words that would change my life forever. He said, "Aneel, this is penance, it's not punishment. You don't have to pay the price for your sins, because Jesus Christ of Nazareth paid the price for you. You are free to go." And it is at this moment that I truly understood how much God loves me, and I could never be the same again. 2 months later, I went for a retreat to South India. My life had already changed a lot, but if there were to be more changes, then I was only too happy. And a lot of people told me that God would really continue to work in my life. The second day that I was there, this was a charismatic retreat, and even though it was very alien to me, I, for some reason, wasn't uncomfortable, with all the clapping and the shouting and the singing. Although by the second day I started to feel left out, and I wanted to join in, but I had no idea what to say because I couldn't make out what anyone else was saying. So finally I chipped in with the only prayer I really knew, and at the top of my voice I declared, "I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen." And before I could continue further, I felt this electricity shoot through me. There's no other word to describe the experience. It is like I had shoved my fingers in a power socket and somebody turned the juice on. And I just kept shaking and shivering with no idea of what was happening, except to know it was something really wonderful. Eventually this feeling subsided, but I just kept waiting for it to happen again, show that it would, show that it must, but nothing did. Morning passed, afternoon came and afternoon passed, evening came and evening passed, and it was time for the session to get over, and I just needed this one more time. And I engaged Jesus in an impassioned plea. I said, Jesus, from this moment onwards, I will not sin. From this moment onwards, I will live a completely surrendered life. From this moment onwards, I will do anything you ask me for. I will even die for you. And very quietly, I heard him say, Aneel, are you sure? And I said, yes, Lord. And then I got blasted nearly off my feet. Whatever happened that morning was wonderful, but it was nothing compared to what I experienced then. You have heard of Joshua bringing down the walls of Jericho, Samson bringing down the temple, Moses parting the Red Sea. That was the raw, naked power of God, and that is what I experienced at that moment. It went on for about 5 or 10 minutes, I have no idea, but by the time it was over, I knew that I had an experience that had changed my life forever. And ever since that moment, all I've been doing is traveling around the world from country to country, city to city, town to town, sharing my testimony and the thousands of things that God has taught me over the years. And this has become a very powerful ministry, and every day there are new people joining it, there are new people coming to Jesus because of it. And one of the things that I encourage people to do is to step out in faith and to do the things that I'm doing. And to those of you who are listening to this, I pray that even as my story touched you, it has also inspired you to go out and do things, because honestly, if God can do what he's done with me and in me and through me in 12 years, there is no reason why he can't do the same and more with you. I want to thank you for listening to this testimony, and I wish you all the best. I ask you to pray for me and the things that I do. God bless you.